that is going on, but that should not detract or distract us, maybe better put, from the actual drone sightings. So it's a little bit of a it's true, but it's a little bit of a cover story for what's actually going on that the government doesn't want to talk about. So the story goes back over a month at this point. Some say longer, some reports are older, of drone sightings. These drones are sightings have heavily centered on New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, went to high school there, and lived in the area, Philadelphia, New York, most of my career. So most of my life, actually. So I'm very familiar with the area, but a lot of them are centered around New Jersey. Been some sightings up in New York, north of Westchester County, but that's kind of a subset of the bigger story. So we'll focus on what we know about New Jersey. Now, what the government has said, the government hasn't said very much. They did an intelligence briefing yesterday, a couple days ago, with the House Intelligence Committee. There are these standing committees in the House and Senate that specialize in intelligence. That was a classified briefing, so it's not like anyone could walk out and tell us exactly what was said. But a few members have made a few comments about it. And what they were told, or what they say they were told, and what you're hearing in the media, and to the extent that the government is saying anything about it, kind of goes along the following lines. That most of these sightings are not drones. Some of them are amateur drones. Once these kind of large SUV-sized drones were spotted, everybody, maybe people had drones in their garage or called Amazon and got one the next day. These little, kind of little. There's some of them are serious. They cost like $1,000 or whatever, but they're not the industrial-sized drones that people have been reporting. But everybody got drones and started sending them up, looking for the other drones. Some of those things were flying around. There are aircraft flying over the area. There are stars and planets. If you look up in the sky for a bright light, if you're not used to doing it, you might be surprised how bright Venus is this time of year. But the point being, so the government's been saying, no, there's really not much drone activity going on, or not any drone activity going on. These are false reports, or people are getting confused. They're seeing airplanes, small aircraft, helicopters, amateur drones, etc. And here's the bottom line. There is some of that going on. Some people are making mistakes. Some people are looking at airplanes, calling them drones. And there are lots of amateur drones flying around these days. One of them crashed in somebody's yard, and they thought it was one of the big government drones, but it was just, like I say, it was wasn't. I'm not saying it was a toy, but it was a kind of an amateur drone. But that does not detract from the fact that these larger drone sightings are valid. There were too many of them. People were quite sure of what they saw. I tend to believe that people, kind of too busy to go around and make things up. Some people do once the headlines start, but these were actual sightings. They were actual drones. They were large scale. I've seen, in my intelligence work and on military bases, I've seen how big some of these drones are, and some of them are the size of airplanes. They're drones. They can fly on their own, the Global Hawk and so forth. But some of them are as big as commercial aircraft. Some of them are, a lot of them are smaller. So they come in all sizes, but the ones that are spotted were quite large. So what the government's doing, they're using the fact that there are false sightings, there are amateur drones, there are aircraft and mistakes, and maybe someone looks at a planet and thinks it's a drone. That is going on, but that should not detract or distract us, maybe better put, from the actual drone sightings. So it's a little bit of a it's true, but it's a little bit of a cover story for what's actually going on that the government doesn't want to talk about. So that's number one. Number two, these are U.S. government drones. How do we know that? Well, the answer is if they weren't, they would have been shot down. Somebody would have done something. Now, Congressman Jeff Van Drew, who represents South Jersey, where I grew up, as I say, I went to KMA High School. Jeff represents that district. New Jersey's KMA County, parts of Atlantic County, and so forth. He said a few weeks ago there was an Iranian mothership offshore, and it was launching these drones. That's clearly not the case. I know Congressman Van Drew, great guy, very level-headed. He's done a lot of good work. Who can blame him for, kind of, reading too much into it or drawing conclusions that were not correct? So I don't really. He was wrong about that, but I don't really fault him. This is very early in the process, and he was doing the best he could based on the information he had to to make sense of it all. But that's not correct. He's a good man, but that's not correct. There's no Iranian mothership. These are not Iranian drones. They're not Chinese drones. They're U.S. drones. And we know that because if they weren't, they would have been shot down, or one of them would have been, captured somehow, or you can interfere with the GPS signals. There are things you can do to defend yourself against a drone attack. We have that capability. We haven't done any of that, which means that there are drones, number one. Number two, to the extent that we had reliable reports in the beginning of this process, these drones were flying a regular pattern, basically a grid. Now, if you know anything about air-sea rescue, I'm not a pilot, but I spent a lot of time at sea. I piloted boats, and you learn sea rescue techniques, but you do the same thing from the air, or someone's lost at sea, and helicopters, or Coast Guard helicopters or aircraft, or others go out to conduct a rescue. They do what's called a grid pattern. They start in the place where the victim, or someone, person fell overboard, or someone's stranded, whatever the case may be. They start in the place where that individual, that victim, or group of victims are most likely to be. And then they obviously look there, but then if they don't see what they're looking for, they form a grid. And as the process goes on, the grid gets larger and larger, kind of like the pattern I'm tracing. So you keep working in a expanding circle around the point of most likely contact. So the grid sort of expands like this, obviously looking for the person. And with the passage of time, particularly at sea, I know we're talking about land phenomena, but I'll get back to that. But particularly at sea, you can drift. The currents are strong. Wind can take you where it wants. People might be paddling, or whatever. So you can drift from the most likely spot. So if they don't find you in the most likely spot, they have this expanding grid that maybe they got the first thing wrong, that maybe the most likely spot was a bad guess or a bad estimate. And B, even if they were right to begin with, if they didn't find you, you might have drifted, so they're expanding in the area. So these drones, based on reports, appear to be flying a grid type of pattern. What does that mean? It means they're looking for something. So, and it must be something fairly important, or you wouldn't have these drones are expensive. I'm not saying the government can't afford to keep them up there. I am saying that the government would not be doing it unless the object of the search were somehow critical or very important. So we know a couple of things. The drones are reliable. There's just been too many reliable reports, notwithstanding all the mistakes and fake reports. Number two, these are U.S. government drones. We know that because they would have been shot down otherwise. And number three, they appear to be searching for something, and that's a reasonable inference from the fact that they are following this grid pattern. Okay, so we're that far along. What are they looking for? Well, we don't know. I'll just be candid. I'm not going to make something up. I don't know what they're looking for, but I do know, as I say, it must be a high value target. It must be something of critical importance from either a national security point of view or a law enforcement point of view, because the government would not be devoting these resources to something that was far less important. If there's a bank robbery somewhere and there's a getaway car, fine, chase them with a state police helicopter, but you're not going to send up a fleet of drones to find a getaway car in a bank robbery. What you're even, an Amber Alert or kidnapping, this wouldn't be the way you would go about it. Number one. Number two, if it were something less critical or less vital to national security, and getting to the point that it is, but if it were less vital than that, they would engage the public. When you're driving down the highway, if there's a kidnapping, they'll put up an Amber Alert, so-called, and engage the public. Okay, here's the license plate number. Don't confront the perpetrator, but if you see this license plate number, this color car, call the police. So that's smart. I mean, you're basically deputizing a large population of tens of thousands, maybe more, of motorists to help in the search. Well, that's the way you do a search when you're looking for something like that. That's not what they're doing here. They're not informing the public. They're not engaging the public. That means that not only is this a high value target that they're looking for, a critical target, but it is of such significance that they don't want to get the public involved. They don't want the public to know. Why would that be? Well, the answer is, look, there's a lot of mystery about these drones right now. As I said, they're downplaying it. They're saying, oh, people don't know what they're talking about. They're amateurs. Again, some of that, but we can discount that. There are actual drones up there. But But why not engage the public if you're looking for something? Because there's a lot of, if not quite hysteria, there's some genuine fear. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of angst. People are like, why won't they tell us? Must be pretty bad. Well, that's actually a reasonable inference. It might be pretty bad. But the point is, the government must feel that the panic that would result if they told you the truth is greater than the panic or fear that is resulting from the drones themselves. In other words, whatever mystery, whatever angst, whatever tension is being caused by the drones, one way to alleviate that is just to level with the public. Say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's why, et cetera. They're not doing that, which means that the actual cause must be something that would cause a worse panic. Okay, so now again, we're using inferential method, but they are government drones. They're searching for something because they're flying a pattern. They're not telling the public. They're kind of blowing smoke in terms of false sightings. Yeah, there's some of those, but that's more of a distraction than anything else. And whatever it is worse than letting the mystery continue, which means it must be pretty bad. It must be pretty serious. It's also not something you can find either on foot or by car. Why do you need drones in the first place? Unless perhaps this is a moving target or you need special equipment. Now, what can a drone do that maybe is more difficult if you're, in a truck or a car, state police force or whatever? Well, they have radiation detectors. When I say radiation, it's not exactly the same as a Geiger counter. It's more the case that everything throws off some degree of radiation, some microwaves or some other heat waves, or has some sort of output that can be detected, and it varies depending on what it is. And so you can actually, some of you may have had, consultants come in and check out your house for leaks or drafts, and you get these photographs back. I've seen them where most of it's kind of yellow, but there's a dark purple spot. Well, that's a leak. You need to put some insulation on. I mean, this stuff is it's fairly sophisticated, but it's also quite common. But the drones can have high-powered versions of that. Of course, they can have cameras. That's the easy part. But these heat or radiation detectors I'm talking about can be put into these drones. So that's as much as we either know or can reasonably infer. I'll take that one step further. And again, I want to be clear, I don't know this for a fact. I don't want to engage in loose speculation, but using the inferential method I described, I'll take it one step further. But again, to be clear, this is a guess. They may be looking for some kind of radiological device, some kind of what's called a dirty bomb, or some stolen or hijacked radioactive material. Now, let me explain what a dirty bomb is. It's a radiological device, weapon, really, weapon of mass destruction, WMD. It's not an atomic bomb. This is not something that could even like Hiroshima scale or Nagasaki scale, let alone much larger than that. That's not what I'm talking about. If that were missing, I think they would have shut down the whole state of New Jersey by now. But what you can do, you can take radioactive material, and you can get it from a dentist's office. You can steal it from some industrial commercial user. You can get it from a nuclear waste site. There are plenty of ways to get this, and then take conventional explosives. So you put the conventional explosive in a bomb, you wrap it in this radiological material, you detonate it, and then this radioactive material goes off. It's not a nuclear explosion, just to be clear, but it will cause radiation to spread, and that area may be a no-go zone. Obviously, extremely harmful to health, but it's worse than that. It would make that area, not talking quite as bad as Chernobyl, but it would make that area off limits, basically radioactive. Plus, the terror effect is huge. Obviously, we can understand that. So this could be a terrorist plot to detonate a radiological device, or one step short of that, perhaps some radioactive material is missing that could be used in such a device, and they're trying to find that. And what they're doing is they're using these drones with detectors to just try to locate it, and obviously they could converge on that and confiscate it or stop the terrorist attack.